This subject came out of a talk that I did for New Direction several weeks ago, a month ago now, regarding the trauma thrivers and how resiliency is the greatest resource that we have in moving forward in our lives and dealing with any life circumstance. And to be honest with you, I was drawing in so much for myself, turning my attention inward and pulling from whatever that resiliency was. And at times, I don't even know what that is and what to name that. And so as we were discussing in the trauma thrivers topic, it came up for me that, you know, resiliency is the greatest resource that exists within us. And it's the pulling of the internal spirit or the internal intuition, or focusing internally on the environment that is the temple, that's the body that we exist in. And we are made up and comprised of a personality, and a personality is our personal reality. You know, how we behave, how we think, and how we feel. And you cannot bypass any one of those systems: thinking, feeling, and behaving. And if you do, you're missing an intuitive voice that is speaking to you in your actions, in your thought process, in your emotions, and your feelings. So as we talk about this today, I want you to think about the resiliency is tapping into a resource within myself. It's deep within the reserves of my mind, my heart, my emotional center, and my actions. I can start to utilize these things for the greater good and to my best benefit, so that not only will I benefit, but the people around me will benefit. One of the things that I noticed was how I'm quick to react when I'm in distress. And I think most of us do that, right? And I want you to think about something else. When you're upset or stressed about something, there's an entire dialogue that's consistently going off in your head. And that dialogue is typically very critical or negative. It is rare that as we're in a stressful situation like COVID or a trauma of some sort or a conflict with someone, that the thoughts running off in our head are, wow, this is amazing. This is a great opportunity to learn. I'm so glad that I'm having this conflict right now so that I can learn a little bit more about myself. So if you're a person that is having that experience, my hat's off to you, because it's rare. The first thought is, what the heck? Why is this going on? I really hate this. And why aren't you listening to me? And shoot, I'm really pissed off about this, which is very common when we're in distress. We will lean into the emotion of anger a lot, but the dialogue in our head is very critical. I want you to think about you internally. When you think about intuition and what drew you to come here today, what do you think that is for you? You know, how would you define it for yourself? And for me, intuition, and please answer that in the chat, is just to tell us what you're thinking is, what is intuition for you, okay? And for me, intuition is a knowing. It's an internal knowing that brings me total peace and understanding. And if you look at the textbook definition of intuition, it is very similar. It's the ability to understand something immediately without conscious reasoning. And I loved when I read that and I got the piece about conscious reasoning, because sometimes my intuition, I think this is nuts, but I'm going to do it. Have you ever just done something incredible, like you've gone to Hawaii and you're at this beautiful beach and you see these people jumping from the cliff and everything in you goes, that's nuts, but my spirit calls me to do that and I want to do that. And you take that leap of faith and you go and you jump and you have this sense of, obviously it's thrill seeking. So your adrenal just goes through the roof and you have this immediate sense of freedom and joy and, you know, an internal sense of ecstasy, almost like, oh my God, it's invigorating, it's thrilling. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying you have to take it to that level, but symbolically it's a leap of faith. And I will say to you that intuition requires a leap of faith. It requires you to jump out of your head with the conscious understanding of how to deal with a problem and listen to a more spiritual or more emotionally driven, a more internally driven response to how to deal with a problem. One of the issues why we are not able to have intuition and why we overthink things, to answer that question, is this. We have been programmed from the beginning of our existence to listen to everyone else's thought process, behaviors, structures, commands, or demands of how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to think, and how we're supposed to feel. You were born into a system. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna hop off and see. For me, intuition is listening to and then trusting my own inner wisdom. Amen, Kathy, I love that. So I just wanted to read it out loud. What happens for us is we're born into this system with these parents, whether you had one or two, or some of you had more, multiple parents, however you came into existence, they own the dialogue that is then programmed into our little open baby brain that says, mold me, teach me, guide me. And what happens is those voices, as we're evolving, are the strongest and loudest voices. And as we developmentally move on into different stages, other voices get internalized along with parental voices. Other voices of authority. In school, it's your teachers. At church, it's your pastors or your priests. Your friends become a huge source. And my mom always had this thing about be careful who you hang out with because you'll become them. And I love that because I was like, I don't care. I can hang out with whoever I want, you know, that teenage mentality. But it was so true for me when I hung out with people that abused anything, substances, food, shopping. I would kind of fall in line with doing those same behaviors, in a sense wanting to fit in, but in a sense to seek validation. So part of what happens is we have learned this automatic response to listen to other people's feedbacks, thoughts, and opinions about who we are, how we're supposed to behave, and what decisions we should be making. Now, that isn't totally off base, like it's not a bad thing or a wrong thing. However, when it becomes automatic to where those voices drown out your internal voices, then intuition cannot reside within you, and you no longer have access to it. And many of us flounder. I know for me, I spent decades trying to tease out, who am I? What is it that I want? How can I fit in? How can I be accepted and, you know, and seek validation and love and all of these things that we need, all these basic emotional needs that we all have, without losing myself. And honestly, I lost myself many times over and over again. And I had some pretty powerful, strong voices that basically said, be quiet, you know, that isn't important. And why are you putting your attention to that? And why are you making such a fuss? And you're making such a big deal. These were really subtle messages. Some of you might have gotten louder ones like be quiet, or I'm going to give, you know, or I'm going to give you something. What is the expression? I've lost it. But anyways, if I lost it, but I'll find it again. Anyways, I'm going to give you something to cry about. You know, stop crying. I'm going to give you something to cry about. And that one really bothers me because it's our instinct as infants to cry, an emotional response to pain or harm or confusion or loss is to have this experience of sadness and tears. So when you program children like that, why would they listen to their internal voice? They think their internal voice is an idiot. They think their internal voice is keeping them in conflict with their caregivers. And as you're growing up, you want to please those caregivers. You want them to be proud of you. You want them to celebrate you in some way. And oftentimes, desperately, we need and want their validation. So as we're in this today and in this process, I want you to now start to tease out and understand the messages that you got, and are you still living them? Are you in a job that was chosen for you? Are you in a job that you were directed towards, not by your inner voice, but by the voice of your parents who said, this is practical, this is pragmatic, this will pay the bills, this is responsible. Those things are more important than the feeling that you have about doing the work that you're doing. And I will ask you to measure that. And Megan says, I took the words right out of her mouth when you said overwhelming sense of peace. Amen. Yes, with intuition, it's an overwhelming sense of peace. I want you to think too, are you having the same conflict in relationship where you have chosen to commit and stay committed for reasons of safety, protection, financial need, responsibility. You feel some sense of responsibility or obligation to please someone else other than yourself. And how many times did you choose relationships because they were convenient? They just happen to fall in your lap, or, you know, this is a really nice person, so I should just stay with them because in my past, I've chosen these other people that have been unhealthy for me. So I'm asking you today to start look at your internal dialogue and start to tease out those things that you've been noticing about yourself, but you haven't really truly taken an inventory about. The hardest thing about intuition is this, is you're going to have to listen to yourself. And you're going to have to listen to not only the dark shadow voice, you're going to have to listen to the voice that is light, that is full of spirit, that is godlike, or God speaking through you, whatever God of your understanding or whatever you imagine spirit and spirituality to be for you, is an internal knowing and a voice that brings you peace, an immediate sense of peace. So as I'm speaking to you now, I want you to start to think of situations where you did listen to that intuitive voice and it was really powerful and it knocked your socks off. I've been practicing different things to allow myself to tap into and to arise that voice and awaken that voice and really tune into that voice and really knock out all the other voices. And COVID really helped me to do that because I've always been an intuitive person. And when I'm in the room in therapy with my clients, I can quiet my mind and I can truly listen and take them in. I want you to know that the very first thing that you need to hone in to your resiliency and your intuition is to listen. If you do not listen to the inner voice, you cannot tap into it. And if you can't tap into it, there is no resource or resiliency that allows you to get through these horrible situations, difficult conflicts, whatever it is for you, trauma, any of that, okay? Or COVID, for example. So I started practicing, now that there wasn't a lot of noise and a lot of distraction, I started practicing more listening. And one of the ways that you can do that is to sit still. Now you watch me, I am hyper, I talk 100 miles a minute. It's why I can lose my train of thought and trip over myself, a little ADD, right? All of that is just energy flowing through me. I have constant thoughts that come into my mind that want and seek expression. And this is one way that I do that. And that's in a positive way. So that's the light side of the personality. But the shadow side is those thoughts come in and they're detrimental and they're harmful and they're negative and they're critical and they're angry and they're disturbing, because they're old messages and old thoughts from other people that I just adapted into myself, and I have to fight them all the time. So intuition can start with just silence. Quiet everything. Turn off that phone, turn off the computer, do it after I'm done, just shut it down. And then start to listen and start to do that by taking in deep breaths, okay? So I'm prepping you for what could happen. The other thing that I've done is very simply have tools, and I'm going to show you some of my tools because it's fun to have tools in your toolkit. I know a couple of weeks ago I did a talk with you guys about emotional freedom technique and tapping, and I'll remind you that tapping, look it up. If you didn't see the video, it's now on New Directions for Women, and you can see me teaching you about tapping. That is a tool to quiet the mind, to calm the nervous system, that you can then start listening to that intuitive voice. The other way is by listening or reading inspirational books or listening to them in audiobooks and daily affirmations. I was taking a walk on Sunday and I was inspired to listen to Lao Tzu, which is the ancient Chinese philosopher that wrote the book, the Tao Te Ching, The Way, right? And I'm reading this, I'm listening to it in an audio, and it's sinking in. It's a very spiritual, mindful practice about staying present and practice the art of not doing. By not doing, you then can do. And that's my simplistic way of interpreting it. So look that book up. Maybe Tanya can put it in the chat if you don't know. And then this morning, I open my book, and I have this book goes day by day, and I open it, and the quote is from Lao Tzu. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's such a trip. My mind was drawn to that yesterday. and I was taking it internally. And then when I opened my book today, there it is speaking to me, you know, about Latsu, go into the desert at night and look at the stars. This practice should answer all questions. The superior person settles her mind as the universe settles the stars in the sky. By connecting her mind with the subtle origin, she calms it. Once calmed, it naturally expands, and ultimately her mind becomes as vast and immeasurable as the night sky. Please look at that as a resource. Why do I tell you this? Because intuition speaks to you through symbols and through signs and through knowing. We get validation from God, the universe, the higher consciousness, the universal collective consciousness, by things like this. I'm seeing Latsu, then this comes up, Latsu comes up again in my reading today to kind of anchor me. The other thing that I do is I'm looking for signs all the time. And if you're interested in that, there's a book called Signs by Willo Ln Jackson, and she's a spiritual medium, psychic. I don't know what the proper term is, but she has this book about signs and how we get signs all the time and we just ignore them. We absolutely ignore them. So I was thinking, what tool can I teach everyone who's going to be watching today about breathing, because breathing is another mindfulness practice. So please hear me. In order to seek intuition, you must first do what? Listen. And in order to listen, you must quiet the mind and the body. And in order to do that, you're going to have to use mindfulness practices. I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some of the mindfulness practices that you use, and what helps you to stay calm? And Tanya's putting up a little poll for you. What mindfulness practices do you currently use? And we have a list there. We'd love to hear from you. So one of them is breath work or breathing. And I was talking to Tanya about this a couple hours ago when we were prepping, and the card that came up, so I'm pulling cards from a deck called Stress Less Cards. Stress Less Cards. And the company that makes them is called sunnypresent.com. I don't know if you can put that, but sunny, like sun shining, present, like a gift.com. And someone gave it to me as a gift, literally. And the card that I pulled was about the breath. Pay attention to breathing. Close your eyes and breathe normally. Start watching your breathing like it was a movie. What part are you breathing with? Your chest, your diaphragm, your whole body? Do you take short or long breaths? Is your breathing smooth or is it shallow? How does it feel? Is it hard? Does it flow freely? Do this for a moment and then breathe deeply with intention for 5 to 10 minutes. I swear to you, when you do that, you will then tap into the mind. See, anything that you do to the body will activate your thinking. You have thousands of neurons in your heart, and you have, I don't know how many thousands or hundreds or millions or whatever of synapses in your brain. On a nerve level, on an energy level, on a communication level, we are energy moving through our nerves, communicating constantly with the brain, the heart, and the tummy, which is the baby brain, and all the other parts of our body. So if you breathe and you slow yourself down, you can start to listen to that intuition and your heart as you pay attention to your breath and slowing down. And I no longer feel anxious. Now I feel warm. Now I feel at peace. Now I feel calm. Then the other voice comes in that says, you need to take time out for you. You need to remember to keep yourself focused on what matters. You need to spend time with your family. Remember that this is healing. You start to hear this inner wise voice that starts to tell you and affirm to you that what you're doing is working and what you're doing is positive. But if you don't quiet the noise, you cannot tap into, and you will never tap into that voice. And you're ignoring the Geiger counter of your life. It's like that is the compass. If you listen to that internal voice, which is your intuition, your inner knowing, that is the compass for your life. That's what tells you, take this job, don't take that job. Don't go down this road. Don't go to the grocery store just yet. Go put gas in your car now. Don't wait till the next stop. How many of you have had little thoughts like that? And if you have one and it stands out in your mind, share it in the chat, because I know I'd love to see it, and probably Tanya would too. Right before COVID, I am not kidding you, I was sitting and I was practicing this intuition with a friend. We actually went to Willo Ln Jackson, one of her day retreats. I happened to be in New Jersey at the time, and it was a month before COVID. How insane is that? If it would have been a week later, 2 weeks later, I would have been locked down and stuck in New York City, which would have been somewhat traumatic on all kinds of different levels, right? So I'm at this, I was pulled and called to go to this retreat. So I go to this retreat and we're in communication with this woman, and she's teaching us all of these cool things, kind of like what I'm teaching you right now. And the people that I'm partnered with, they asked me, I said, this big change is coming and I can feel it and I sense it. I just don't know what it is for me, but I can feel it's going to shift everything in my life. My work and my relationships are going to be impacted by this. And what was so interesting to me was they said, well, when does this happen? And the thing that popped out of my head was the Ides of March. All I remember about the Ides of March is it has something to do with Julius Caesar. So somebody looked that up. I can't remember if that's when Caesar was killed or murdered, but I think it's in a Shakespeare play. And I'm sorry I didn't look it up before we got on here because it still kind of trips me out. Why did I use that language? That's not something I've ever said. I've never denoted March 15th or March 16th. I think somebody looked that up and put the right date in there too, because it was either the 15th or the 16th. I've never said, oh, let's go out on the Ides of March. I mean, how weird, right? And then I just kind of sat back with that and I didn't think another thing of it. When I got quarantined to home, I was asked to shelter because I'm undergoing some treatment for cancer still, and obviously my immune system is impaired. Well, guess what happened? My doctor tells me, thank you for putting in the chat, March 15th, and there's a whole history on it. Thank you, Tanya, and someone did it right before you, so thank you too. It went away quick, so I can't see your name. Anyway, so I go to my doctor, and it's a Tuesday, and it's March 15th, and he says to me, do not go back to work. Now, Tanya knows, and Babby, if there's any other New Directions women on here, know how much I love going to New Directions and connecting with those women and with my peers. And it was very shocking to me. So I get home and I sit at home and I make that call and I'm like, I can't go in, I'm gonna la la la. And then I call my friend who I went to the thing with and I said, oh, I'm so upset. This is just so bizarre. I don't know if I like this, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, why are you upset? You said that. And I go, what do you mean? And she said, you said the Ides of March, my life would change, my work and my relationships. Oh my God, I had forgotten. It's a month later, I had forgotten. Why am I telling you this? Think within yourselves, go back and pull up stories like that and write them down. Not only did I say that, and she goes, well, when is it going to end? And I said, it'll end in June. This changed. This is all before COVID. Whatever this thing is that happens in March is going to end the end of June, beginning of July. Oh, okay. End of June, beginning of July. Well, sure enough, last week was the first time that I was released by my doctor to go back on campus to New Directions. And here we are, the last week of June, beginning of July. How crazy is that? Now, hear me that I don't do this all the time. When Tanya said I'm magical, it's just because I'm passionate in the work that I'm doing. I'm able to make some really big changes in people's thinking and how they feel. And my clients have called it magic. Now, this truly sounds like magic. This guessing, this predicting, this vision, whatever you want to call it. It's intuition. Call it that. We all have it. This is important, and I don't want you to miss this. We all have it. If you wonder if you have it, if you had those people in your life that you're like, God, how did she know that? You know, when you pick up the phone and you're like, I wonder how Mary's doing. And then you look down in the text, you're like, oh my God, it's Mary. I haven't talked to Mary in 5 years, 2 months. There she is, right? Write those down. If you want to send some examples here, we would love to see what those examples are. Start writing them down and start noticing. That is the sign that you're tapping into your intuition and that you're right on track and you're right in line with it. As I said before, the thing that interferes is us listening to other voices that invalidated us throughout our life so that we ignore the voice inside that's trying to guide us to make right decisions for ourselves. Have you ever intuitively just been around somebody and said, Something about this person, I don't like their vibe. I don't like their energy. You know, some of you may struggle, and if you come from a certain religious base and you think like, oh, this is too metaphysical or whatever, it's really not. There's a science behind energy. There has been studies done where we've used EKGs on the brain. We've also used thermographs to show heat coming off the body, where people can actually generate energy and, you know, heal someone else. That's what Reiki is all about. That's what Qigong is all about, these alternative medicines. And using meditation, I know you've seen so many studies and probably videos and gone to webinars where they teach you how meditation, you can slow down the entire system of the body and you can heal. You can heal injury, you can heal pain, etc. That makes sense, right? So intuition is like a muscle. You have to use it. You have to use it. Like I go to the gym and I use my weights. And when I stop using them, trust me, my muscle goes away. And I can't wear shirts like this and show off my guts. So today I could, because I'm back at the gym. So you have to use it. You have to practice tuning in. So I've said several times during this talk, the first thing to do is to listen. Okay? The way that you can listen is by breathing, but it's also by removing all external barriers to you listening. And that's noise, any kind of distraction from outside. Taking a breath, a single breath, is an act of meditation. And if you can do that, even when you're sitting at work and you close the door and you just take in a very, very deep breath, it will send a signal to your brain that I am ready to be in the spirit of calm and peaceful reflection. And I am ready to receive and listen to my higher intuition and my greater knowing and the greatest good for myself. But you have to practice it. If you don't ever do it, it's never going to happen. The first thing that you can do to heighten intuition and to start to learn to tune into it is to call all your attention into your internal world. So just like I described to you, sitting in the office, closing the door like my door is closed, shutting out all external barriers to self. Your internal world is everything underneath the skin, inside of you. It's not anything out there. If it works, if you need to have it, you don't have to do it that way, but closing your eyes, I did it a few minutes ago instinctively. That always works for me to shut everybody out. So just for a second, close your eyes, take in deep breaths. And as you breathe, I want you to just tune in to the quiet. The one thing you'll hear is you'll hear the sound of my voice because I'm here teaching you. But when I go quiet, you should just hear quiet. There should be silence. When you stay in that, and you can open your eyes because I'm going to keep teaching you. When you stay in that over just a little period of time, it could be a minute or 5 minutes, the quiet starts to shift into thoughts. At that moment, the second step you can do, the first step is call attention to inner world. The second step is call attention to the sensations that you're experiencing in your body when you have your eyes closed, you're quieting out the world. I started to notice a little flutter energy in my stomach, and I know some of that is excitement and some of that is probably nerves too. And if I breathe into that, so notice if you're at home and you're probably relaxed listening to this, so you may not have any tension, but maybe you have tension in your shoulders and you're thinking, I got to get through this thing because I have a Zoom following this, and then I got to go to work, or I'm going to go do what, go take care of my kid or my fur baby. So notice any areas of tension or sensation in your body that is not calm and peaceful, and just bring your attention to that. The third thing that you can do is interact with that sensation using all of your senses. And this I call emotional intuition. Is if I notice that fluttering, what does it feel like? It literally feels like pulsation. Is the pulsation heavy? Is it quick? Is it fast or slow? If I close my eyes and call attention to that, does it have a color? See, these are questions I ask myself, and you all can write this down and remember at the end of this, Tanya's recording and all of this will be back on New Directions for Women YouTube channel for you to review. So if you forgot or you don't write things down, go back and review this, okay? So calling attention to the sensations in your body when you first start quieting the noise, Look internally into yourself and see, do I see color? Do I hear a sound? Is that thing in my stomach making sound? It's pulsing, it's moving, it has motion. It doesn't feel heavy, but maybe a little nauseous. Those of you who have stage fright or fear of public speaking, you might feel really, really nauseous right now if you were me. Does it have a shape? I don't see a shape. It's almost like liquid, like water. If I didn't close my eyes and I didn't take this moment with you, I would have never noticed my stomach, and I would be operating from here up. And now that I'm noticing it, my job is just to tune in, to see and listen. What is that pulse, that fluid movement, nausea, weightless sensation in my stomach saying to me? This is the part where a lot of us don't shift into from internally focusing, even in our meditation. We forget to dialogue, or we don't, or we've been taught not to dialogue with what is happening, what is the experience of this moment in the very present. If you think about the steps so far, what I'm really teaching you to do is to stay in the present and stay within your own physical being and space instead of doing anything about anything that's out here. And those of you who work any kind of program know we're powerless over people, places, and things. So just repeat that when it's time for you to go internally. And when you're wanting to tune into intuition, why would I want to do that? I mentioned that way earlier, is if you're having conflict in relationship or at work, you're in a struggle, you're in a power struggle, you're indecisive, you're confused, you're having to make decisions, you're unclear about what those decisions are. This is it. That is a signal from the shadow side of the mind to tune in to the inner wisdom that you're carrying around with you and have probably ignored because of all those external voices. So hopefully by saying it the way that I just did, you're now following what I've been speaking about so far for the past 20 minutes or so. So you go into the body, you notice these sensations. Does it smell? Does it have a touch, weight, sense, color? Does it move? Is it light? Is it heavy, etc.? Go through all of the sensations: physical, touch, smell, sound, taste even. And to me, there's not a taste, it's just nauseous. And if you ever get really anxious, nauseous will have a taste like an acidity, because you get that gastric reflux response and you taste acidity in your throat and in your mouth. So anxiousness can lead to that. Your thoughts are directly connected to your heart and to your stomach. As I said in the beginning, we have a clear line of communication going on here. It's why you can be sick to your stomach. It's why you have, carry this pain in your shoulders and your neck. Your body is physically responding to what you are telling it all day long. I'm tired. This is too hard. I don't want to do this. I don't like this person. If you're having those thoughts and interacting in those ways, your body then starts sending signals of distress. That's what pain is. That's what's neck ache, back ache, stomach ache, feet ache, headache is all coming from, is trying to communicate with you. And the reason you don't go beyond the hurt and you only stay there is you've not learned to tap into the intuition. Tune into the hurt. Tune into the pain. This is a great skill for any of you that are clinicians or coaches, therapists, counselors of any sort, is going to your client. Oh my God, tune into that pain. Don't numb it. Don't dull it. Don't ignore it. For God's sakes, do not ignore it. It's a signal that your brain and your body are communicating to you that it's time to go in. So now let's go in. So step 1, call attention to the internal world. Step 2, notice the sensation of the internal world and the physical body that you're living in. Step 3, enhance that and connect with interactions with those sensations by saying, is it heavy? Is it light? Does it have a taste, touch? Does it make a sound? And does it bring up an image? I don't really have an image. I have an image of almost like going like this. So a little panic or a little fear that I'm associating with that tummy. What that brings up for me, if I start to communicate with that, is not being good enough. That is so at the core, at so many of all of us have at our very core, this negative belief that we're not good enough. So I can quickly tap into that because it's something that I've worked on, that shadow side, over and over and over again. So being present in front of people, showing my true self, speaking in my true voice, of course, the little me is going to freak out a little bit and start to hear I'm not good enough, right? So part 4 for you is, or step 4 is to engage with the sensations and can it talk to you? So I hear that little tiny voice that says, oh my God, what if you're boring? Or what if nobody gets anything out of this? Or what if nobody's even listening to you? That's step 4. I can now hear it as a voice. So intuition is when you allow yourself to slow down, quiet everything externally, pay attention to inner world, connect with physical sensation, and now hear the dialogue of the inner voice, which is your inner truth, okay? Step 5 is you can ask it about itself. You can ask questions to that pain in your stomach and say, what are you here for? What are you trying to say to me? What do you want? What are you teaching me? What are you representing right now? What do you want me to know, or what do you want me to do? So as we're sitting here, any of you that had a conflict today are anticipating a conflict about a conversation later, having to get somewhere on time, having to make a decision, having to lead a meeting, having to tell somebody something really uncomfortable, getting bad news, an illness, etc. All of you right now notice that. Tune into that. Write it down if you want. Tell yourself, okay, here's the thing that I'm anticipating, or this thing that's going to happen. Now, go through the sensations that you feel as you start to think about that event. And then speak to it. What is this nervous, anxious, upset, depressed, heavy, sick feeling in my stomach, my back, my spine, my feet, my head? What do you want me to know or do? What's the truth about myself, and what am I avoiding? This step, which is your 5th step, is really, really important. What is the truth about myself, and what am I avoiding? The intuitive voice does not get ignored, is not to be ignored, and can be heard very clearly. So when you ask all these negative emotions and thoughts and feelings, the shadow part of your personality, what is the truth that I'm avoiding? Trust me, it has an answer. And you already know what it is. And you're like, oh my God, I don't want that person to be mad at me. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose favor. I don't want to be the bad one. I don't want to be looked at as the bad one or wrong. I don't want to get called out. I don't want people to know what I'm really thinking. So there you go. Step 5, what is the truth that I'm avoiding, and what is it that this sensation, this feeling, this experience is wanting me to know about myself? Step 6 is listen to the answers and engage with them. We often get signals like, Gina, this isn't, this is not right. Don't do this. Don't be here. Don't raise your voice like you're losing it right now. You're not in control. Like, you need to calm down. Sometimes we hear them. We're like, I don't care. I'm mad and I'm going to be heard and I'm going to say whatever I need to say, even if it winds up hurting us or the person that we're delivering that to. So listen to the answers when you ask, what is it that I'm avoiding? Well, I'm avoiding conflict. I'm avoiding really letting someone know, you know what, I've fallen out of love with you, or I no longer want to be in this relationship, or I no longer want to work in this position, I'm unhappy. We're avoiding the truth that we already know. And there's no escaping from it, really, because we will just stay in conflict and in pain. So now we're creating pain within ourselves by not listening to the intuitive answers that come if you just listen and you just speak to the inner voice. What is it that I want to know? I need to know that I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, and I'm ready to make a change, whatever that change is. This is the intuition. This is the inner voice. Gina, you need to move on. You need to not stay stuck in this place, in this relationship with this person, in these dynamics. You need to let go. I will tell you that 80 to 90% of all of our conflicts and our inability to hear is about not letting go. We can't hear the inner voice because we're unwilling to let go of the inner critic. And of the parental voices or authoritative voices that we've been listening to our whole life that limit us, make us feel small, and don't advance us and allow us to grow into the beautiful human with all of our wonderful gifts that we're meant to be. The seventh step, and I'm almost done with the steps, I'm so excited, is have a conversation with yourself about your inner truth, what you just heard. Wow, I just heard, Gina, you need to love yourself. You need to tell yourself that you're really great at this, and you need to accept that you're doing exactly what you were meant to be doing and put on this earth to do. Some of you might not hear a voice right away. It might not even be a voice. It might just be a feeling. Some of you might hear silence. Your job is to be patient. Your job is to be patient before making decisions, and delay making decisions when you're in any state of angst, because that's not coming from your intuition. If you are in conflict and you make a decision or a choice, it's most likely not going to be a good one, a healthy one, or the right one for you. It might resolve your pain in that moment, but it's a quick fix. You need to delay actions in that moment of conflict. And if you feel the need to control something, that is the wrong time to decide how you're going to let it go. Because you've got to allow that struggle to happen before you gently succumb to the inner voice that brings you peace and allows you to come to a decision without really feeling a lot of pain about it. Sometimes we're surprised when we make decisions. Like I've had people choose to divorce, and my God, this is a monumental, huge decision that impacts many lives, but they have this immediate sense of peace when they make that decision, or leaving a job, or leaving a relationship, or moving away, or choosing to sell something, or whatever, pass something on to somebody else. Well, you have an immediate sense of peace about it, and that's your cue that in that calm and in that peace, that's the right decision and the right choice for your inner truth. Be patient if you don't hear anything, because you've ignored that voice for so long. It's going to take you a while to let it tap in and talk to you, like Latsu spoke to me and just immediately went, here you go. It's your time now to stop doing and practice the art of non-doing. Now, I'm doing a lot right now, but in between, trust me, that I did mindful meditation in the morning. I went to the gym. I made myself a great lunch. I ate that quietly and peacefully just by myself. I took all of that in, and then now I had more energy, more love, and more compassion, and more knowledge. In a sense, I'm accessing wisdom and knowledge that I can share with you all, because I took those steps to listen to that voice, right? And practicing self-care is the greatest way that you can access your intuition. One of the last steps, I'm going to say, these other steps are kind of intermingled, but surround yourself with people, the eighth step, to take care with your voice. So people that actually care, people that want to hear your inner dreams, your inner wisdom, that they validate them, that they honor them, that they tell you, you should go with that. You should take that chance. You should take that risk. I think if you feel that strongly about it, you should go for it. And if you don't have people like that, if they go, oh my God, that's scary. What if you lose money? What if it doesn't work out? What if right out the door, those are not the people that you need to be sharing your intuition with. If you surround yourself with people that hear, validate, and encourage that, the voice gets louder. The ninth step is to involve your dialogue, your friends and your people, involve them in your dialogue and releasing your inner voice from its prison that you've had it captive in. If your inner critic pops up and that voice starts to leak in relationship, ask your friends, look, if you hear me putting myself down or questioning myself in a way that's self-deprecating, or you notice maybe I'm even being in the role of victim or anything like that, I trust and love you, that I know in a kind way you'll let me know, but I would love some help in pointing out that inner critic. And I want you to notice if you hear me tuning into a negative, critical, stinking, thinking voice in my head, because I need some support around tapping and working through that shadow part of myself, giving it voice, not ignoring it, hearing it, but then taking deep breaths, mindfully practice reflecting, going inward, listening to my physical sensations in my body, and asking God, the universe, the God of my understanding, the power, the energy, whatever you want to call it, my higher consciousness, to let me hear my evolved voice, my inner wisdom voice, my higher functioning voice. Let me tap into that. And your friends can help you do that by just going, you're really getting down on yourself about this, you know, what's that struggle about? And then reminding you to go in and figure out what the struggle is, okay? And the last one is probably one of the most important ones. It's to admit to yourself the truth. Your actions should be based on this truth. After you've sat in this process to tune in to the resiliency of your inner wisdom, to the resiliency of your spirit, your soul, your higher power, name it, what best suits you to name it, your higher reasoning, whatever you want to call it. When you've tuned into that and tapped into that, you now have to admit to yourself, my God, I can't believe I've allowed myself to stay in this unhappy relationship at work, with my boss, with my friend, with my lover, with my partner for so long. And I'm not willing to do this to myself anymore. Your actions should be based on hearing that and that choice. If you listen, you can't ignore this anymore. If you truly tap in using those steps as I identified them for you, you will struggle to ignore this voice, and your intuition will get louder and louder to the point where you won't have to do a lot of work to tap in. It'll immediately be accessible and available to you. When I started doing this, I'm going to imagine on Tanya's end, and she can speak to that because we're going to wrap up in a minute, is when this was presented to me, I was already meditating about accessing myself, making myself more available to teach these spiritual concepts and principles that are behind the psychology that I've used with my clients my entire career. I understand the theory, the understanding of family systems and psychodynamic theory and experiential dynamics, psychodynamic, et cetera, et cetera. However, what I knew was driving me was my intuition. What I knew worked with my clients was me listening to my intuitive voice and then sharing with them the truth of my intuition, which then allowed them to share with me the truth of their own intuition. And I amplified the truth of their own intuition. I kept calling attention to it. And I saw miraculous changes. And I thought, this is so different than a lot of the theoretical perspectives and techniques and tools that I learned. How can I offer this to people? And here suddenly comes an invitation from Tanya, New Directions for Women, to put me in a space where they're allowing me to choose these topics during this COVID that's very different than all the other things. I remember saying to Tanya, I go, let's do things that are more spiritual, invitational, and raise all of our emotional spirits, you know, to a different level, instead of just talking about tools, techniques, and theories and trauma in the way that we're all used to talking about it. So here we are. My intuition voicing with Tanya, Tanya having her own intuition, and an invitation coming to me, her and I discussing it. And we've had several of these with you all that have been really terrific. I've enjoyed them, but we also get tremendous feedback. So admit to yourself the truth as you hear it, as you understand it in that moment when you do this exercise, tapping into the intuition. And do not ignore it, and base your actions and your behavior on that voice and no other voices. And that's the goal, that's the intention, and that's what resourcing your resiliency is about by tapping into your intuition. These two things are bedfellows. You know, you can't have one without the other, okay? Your life will shift, and be prepared for that. You will start to see unbelievable shifts, like I'm seeing by just the energy and the spirit and the healing that I've had and that other people are having just by engaging in conversations like this. And I'm not the only person doing this, but I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, okay? So reflect what is real about you when you do hear that inner knowing, and don't tap into what's not real about you. So you know what's truthful. We always know when we're getting it right. And if we'll just listen to that, then that's it. That's your inner wisdom, and that's your inner voice, and that's your intuition. So on that note, because I want to give you time, and I want to give Tanya time to jump back in here with me. Listen to the truth of your inner knowing, and it will bring you peace, it will bring you joy, and it will set you on the right path. And you will never, 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 ever regret doing that for yourself. So that's it for me.